grief is like a pineapple. Like it looks well, it looks prickly and scary and ugly on the outside, but when you go inside of it, it's like rich and delicious and luscious. So I'm never gonna
Wow.
forget that
I
symbol.
love
Like
that
that's so
metaphor. Grief
helpful.
is like a pineapple. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations, podcast where we take those three words, those three themes, and start the conversation and just see where it takes us. Today, very excited to have a very wonderful and interesting human, Sarah Hope. Sarah Hope is a nature-connected microdosing and breathwork coach and shamanic guide who is based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. Hey, Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to see you.
Awesome. You too. Really great to see you. Yeah, I've known Sarah for a couple years now, like 3 years maybe, I would
Yeah,
say. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So I thought she would be perfect for this podcast. So I'm really glad we could work this out and that you could join us. So just to get started, um, around your plant medicine work and that sort of thing, I'm wondering, I always like to start with a story. So I'm wondering if you can tell us the story of how you came to work with plant medicine and be a microdose coach.
Yes, I can totally tell you that story, and it's an interesting one. Um, so I mean, I'm gonna try to not make it a long story, but I think the story starts with like childhood and being like a child mystic and
Mm.
losing that sense. My dad was in medical school the whole time I was growing up. Like he decided to go to medical school the day I was born. He had this like dharma moment, and so I always like was tracking two things in my life, one like the mysticism and the beauty and like the reparative and restorative um spirit of nature, and
Mm.
then at the same time the healer's track, or that my father's healer's track, as somebody who was studying to help people, feel better, be better, work with disease. And so like both of those were really like formative forces in my childhood. And getting to college, I didn't really know what to do with them. Like the best I could possibly do was creative writing.
Mm.
Um, which was great. But eventually I realized, that I couldn't really make a living at that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with myself here? With these like deep forces flowing through me.
Mm.
And I studied psychology and I studied Spanish. And I don't know why, but I know I like psychology was like kind of coming along the lines of like understanding the psyche was getting me closer to where I felt I needed to be. And when I graduated, I just really needed a job. And I got a job, like a part-time job, tutoring adult professionals
Hmm.
and in Spanish. And one of the people that I tutored was learning Spanish. He was a psychiatrist who was really
Mm.
into consciousness and the nature of consciousness. And he let me know that he was studying Spanish so that he could go and he could learn from curanderos in South America. And what he started to tell me about shamanism and plant medicine was like my heart caught fire. Like I
Mm.
just was like that was always the feeling, or like the type of healing, or wholeness or initiation that I was chasing, I think, or like looking for or searching for in my studies and in my endeavors with art. And then it took me 15 years. It just was not practical. I had two little baby
Oh
girls at
gosh.
home. So I was like, it's not time to go down to South America and do ayahuasca. I get that. But I did like learn everything I could learn. And then when my own dark night of the soul arrived, and when my body
Mm.
was unwell and my spirit was unwell, um, my like kept hitting walls in the allopathic system for how to heal myself. And I was like, oh yeah, but there's this thing that I know about.
Mm.
Um, and then I was invited to a ceremony, and in that ceremony, it was like the spirit of the plants was like, well, welcome. And you've been like, we've been waiting for you. And it felt like to you, you've neglected this, but like to us, that time hasn't mattered. Like your 15 years is just a blink of an eye. No
Right.
problem. Like here you are, we've got work to do kind of thing.
Let's
So
go.
yeah, yeah. So then through that work, at that time I was a high school teacher,
Mm,
and that was my moment of like,
mm,
this is it, like the thing that I was trying to find or know um, since childhood, I think.
mm.
So yeah, that was my moment.
That's awesome. Well, a couple things stick out to me about that, and just you were saying like, oh, I don't know, I chose psychology and Spanish. I don't know why, and yet it like set you up perfectly for meeting this gentleman who like then led you to this path that has lit your heart on fire, as you said,
Yeah.
which is totally very magical. So, first, I'm curious, like which plant medicine was it that you did that first journey with that like
That's an interesting question. It shouldn't be, but I got to go to this place where there was like a psychopharmacologist, like part psychopharmacologist, part shaman, had created
Mm,
these like very interesting potions and combinations of medicine, with like also synthetic medicines and combinations of
oh wow.
plants. So it was called one thing, but I'm guessing that there was probably like um, some variant of MDMA in
Mm,
there, because I felt very loving and very like heart opened and very connected to myself and other people. And then there were other like plant spirits swimming around in there, because there were a lot of visuals, um, and like signs and symbols and animals and things
wow.
like that
Sounds like a
continued.
potent mix for sure.
It was cool. Yeah. It was cool. I mean, I'm also a little bit of a lightweight, like medicines that are psycholytic for other people. I will be like traversing universes. So,
Mm,
um, yeah.
um, wow, yeah. That's kind of amazing considering all the work that you do in the field that you're a quote unquote lightweight.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm curious, well, not curious, but for those out there listening who may not know all these terms, like what would you say a curandero is, if I even said that correctly? And what is the difference between that and a shaman? Or is there not a difference?
That's an interesting question, because I've been trying to find a good way lately to teach this in the current, course of study that I'm teaching. So, what I've come to is like every culture has its mystics. Like since the beginning of
Hmm,
time, I don't know if you ever watched the movie. I'm gonna go like off course, but hopefully
that's
I'm
fine.
going on course. But so I don't know if you ever watched the movie or read the book Clan of the Cave Bear.
I read it a long time ago, like I can barely even remember it, but go ahead.
Well, what touched my heart about that is that there was like a man and a woman in that tribe that were responsible for healing and learning. Like they could be, you know, going up onto a rock and meditating and fasting until they understood what was like spiritually going on with the tribe, or they
Hmm.
could be pulling a tooth. Um, and so I think the tradition of healer, or somebody who's tasked with like the health and well-being of of the humans and the community that they inhabit, is an old tradition and has many, many different names. So the word shaman, probably comes from maybe like Sami culture of like northern Finland and Lapland,
Yeah.
um, or maybe from like the Mongolian area. It's like hard to say, but many, many different cultures have different words for somebody who, like from the beginning of time, from like early humans and even humanoids, somebody who was tasked with like the spiritual and physical wellness of
Hmm.
the tribe. So I don't think that there's all that much difference between a curandero and a shaman. other than like the cultural traditions and the practices that they may have learned to accomplish these things.
Yeah.
Um, but both of them would be people who would be designated from childhood or like selected from childhood and brought
Hmm.
into either a lineage or like sometimes from what I understand when somebody is like a child, actually, from a teacher standpoint, like what they're describing as a child that might be put on Ritalin. But like,
Wow.
a child who has a lot of weird dreams and is kind of spacey and, kind of highly sensitive, like
Hmm.
somebody that we might put on medication, like would be in a traditional setting might be somebody who would be maybe designated and trained for that role.
Yeah. Would you say when you mentioned earlier, the mysticism and sort of nature connectedness of you as a child, would you put yourself into that sort of category of like having the weird dreams and like that people were like, maybe suppress that for the moment, because it's not accepted in our culture.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
Because I didn't have elders to,
Hmm.
recognize that in me. I mean, I'm sure
Right.
I definitely had elders, but I don't really know. I know when I was like little, really little, like a couple times when somebody died, I was like felt really celebratory and joyful for them. Like I just
Hmm.
had this like innate knowing that that was not a sad thing, like that their soul was going somewhere. And at that time, like when I was a little girl, I would lay down. You know how kids will like lay down in like a patch of sun, like a dog or a cat does that too. I
Yeah.
remember I would like lay down and I could see myself or my soul like above me, like changing shapes and like
Wow.
entertaining me and making me laugh. And I'd be like, oh, that's that, and this is me, and like we're together in this endeavor. But that there's some sort of like soulness or entity that doesn't necessarily need to be in my body, but as we grow older, that more tends to stay in our bodies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating that you can even remember that because I don't know. I had this inclination and thought that I think most children have those experiences and then it's just totally like squashed by our culture of today. It's just not supported in it really in any way.
yeah.
Um, which, to me leads to perhaps, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but in some way, perhaps led to your dark night of the soul that you mentioned. Like
Yeah.
needing to reconnect to that part of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so grateful for some of the scholars that have made maps for us of that might be able to help us understand our experience. And I also use this a lot, in my coaching. Um, I really love the hero's journey, like the call,
Hmm.
the rejection of the call, and that sort of dark night of the soul. And I also love Maureen Murdoch's the heroine's journey,
Hmm.
because part of the heroine's journey is like this awakening to like spiritual aridity. It goes from like over identification with the masculine,
Hmm.
like trying to have like a structured career and, trying to get some credibility in the world through, you know, emulating or over identifying with the masculine. And then it goes to like waking up to the spiritual aridity of that.
Hmm.
And that's totally my story, like of, entering an institution and being, um, a professional or trying to be, or trying to like at least wear that costume. Um, and it's like a heavy costume to wear. So yeah, that spiritual aridity comes then with like the descent to the goddess,
Hmm.
um which like many goddesses in lore like live in the underworld, like so many goddesses live live in the underworld, and like the descent to the goddess requires like a um losing of one's identity,
Hmm.
you know.
Do you feel like the heroine, because everyone is more, I think, familiar with the hero's journey. And my wife, Tiffany, who you also know, actually had a very similar experience of being very in the masculine and, trying to be on the career and doing the thing, which I think a lot in our culture do. And I feel like the heroine's journey and part of that isn't as well known. And, I think most men would be just like, well, I don't need that. But I would disagree. And I feel like looking at your face right now, you would disagree too. So why is that?
Ah, well, yeah, I want to hear more about why you disagree. But I mean, for me, I've gotten to walk with many people at this point, for the last decade or so. I've gotten to walk with people on their journey of soul initiation.
Mm,
And like the hero's journey is, one leg of the path, but then the like awakening to soul, or like the softer inner parts, requires the like the subtleties, and the what's the word I'm looking for? Like it requires like the subtle, deeper inner sort of like fleshiness of the hero's journey.
hmm
Yeah.
Like and getting in
Or the
touch with like,
heroine's journey.
yeah, getting in touch with intuition and vulnerability and finding the strength that are innate to those qualities, I would say.
Yeah. I don't think the hero's journey is a complete story.
Mm, how so?
Well, I think it's, it goes in this like circle and it's a beautiful story, but like then, once one returns with the elixir, like the choice is to journey inward, like to spiral inside of that circle. And so like I work with so many men who are waking up to like the spiritual aridity of their not being allowed, or the masculine looking like not being allowed to feel your emotions, or like feeling
Yep.
shame about feeling your emotions, and what a deep wound that is. And then they may have their own descent to the goddess, and feeling that, like touching that like soft inner surface of self
hmm
that can feel really deep, really emotional, and that also like how much effort we spent avoiding getting to that descent.
So much effort spent avoiding
Right.
it, but you're right. I mean, I speaking from my own experience, I feel I have, at least in part, if hopefully it's a continual journey, but I have gone down into that work, and as hard as it is, it's like the most beautiful and rewarding part, I feel, of like this whole cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need both the male and female to balance. It's um just it is, it just is. Like I can't remember the name, an Indian, a goddess in Hindu that's half man and half female,
Mm.
and I actually have a statue of it on my desk. I should know the name of it. I'll figure it out and put a link in the show notes. But yeah, that, I don't know, it just really resonates with me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that we're not talking about right now, but I think is kind of like hovering around our conversation, is like the wound of colonization
Mm,
and modernization, right? Where that like heavy emphasis on like you being a man and being just so, or me being a woman and being just so, and the cultural expectations that prevent us from like more deeply knowing ourselves, or
hmm
knowing, that like the beautiful relationship between our inner anima and animus. Um, because
Yeah.
yeah, we're not invited to explore that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, we're opening the invitation here.
Absolutely.
And there'll be ways to connect with Sarah if you want to explore that more for yourself here. We'll get to that at the end. Um, I'm wondering, what is it if what do you feel like you have learned the most about love with your work with the medicines that maybe perhaps you don't think you would have learned otherwise?
Um, wow. Let me sit with that for just a moment. I mean, I suppose the first layer, or the first initiation, was like learning how much I love
Mm,
in the world, like how much of everything that I've done has been for love.
mm,
Whether it was like for the love of my parents, or the love of myself, or the love of like humanity. And like maybe they're not so separate, but um,
but just
yeah,
really
that
recognizing and seeing that and like taking a moment when you're like on a journey and like feeling into that and being like, oh wow, like love is driving all of this.
Yeah, I mean, so often that's totally it. So often when I'm in like plant medicine journeys, like trying to figure something out, even recently, like that this threshold of entering the legal model,
Hmm.
I'm like always have this moment of like, ooh, I'm uncomfortable right now. Like, why am I here again? And like the answer is always for love. It's
Hmm.
always that. It's always some version of that, like some energy that flows through my body that's like, you're here for love. Like that's really all you need to know about that. Like,
Yeah.
let's go on this journey and see where like love takes us. And it does, like, there's love, Scott, and then there's longing. And I
Hmm.
know that you have been to, like, you've been to Oaxaca with me before and like know my elders. Um, and this last journey was like, I saw this word written on a wall, a mural somewhere, and it was like añoranza. And I was like, what is that? Añoranza. And I do speak Spanish, but I was like, I have to look up that word because it's like really touching my heart. And
Hmm.
the word, when I looked it up, was like longing, but like it's a very special translation, a beautiful translation. So I asked Don Manuel about it, I asked my teacher about it. And he started to like, he sat right down with me and he was like, this, you're asking a good question. And I could see that like love and also like the longing for love has like created my entire life.
Hmm. Hmm. So what does that is are you able to like kind of put into English what that translation of longing kind of really gets at?
Um, I don't know. I just know that it's like a really poetic word. And
Hmm.
like when I close my eyes and I think of the word añoranza, I'm thinking of like the like Mother Mary, like longing for her lost son, or like
Hmm.
I'm thinking of like the type of longing that's so magnetic that it would like take us all over the world until we find it. Like it's um to me it seems like a fully embodied grief
Hmm. Hmm.
that
Grief.
causes us to like move and dance through the
Right.
world. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, and obviously grief is sort of the opposite side of the coin from love in many ways. They're so connected to each other. Um, I guess, what as you feel into that, is there a specific grief that you feel around that longing?
Um, yeah. Uh, so I feel a lot of things right now,
Hmm.
but I think that the original wound, and there is a scholar who says this, it might be Rumi, but I'm not quite sure. Somebody said this to me recently, but like the first layer of wounding, the first wound is to come apart, like to come into form,
Hmm.
physical form. And like in order to come into physical form, we have to like come into duality, right? Like the nature of reality is based on duality and polarity. So like the agreement there is to embody duality and long for love. And
Hmm.
um yeah, it's like the self always longing for itself,
Hmm.
and never quite hitting the mark because we're
Yeah.
always changing, right?
Yeah. Or caught up in trying to pretend to be something that we're not, or, when you say the self is always longing for the self, I want to add like the authentic self is always longing for the authentic self,
Yeah.
um, just to like get it to that deeper level. Um, I'm curious with the clients that you work with, how often are there issues of love and loss that you're dealing and coaching around with either just straight coaching or microdosing or anything, breath work?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, love and loss is always like a constant stream. They're like our, constant allies, always
Yeah.
with us.
Is there one example? Obviously, you don't have to name the person, but is there an example of like a loss that someone was trying to like grapple with and come to terms with that, either a journey or microdosing helped like get them through that and come to peace, be peaceful, be at peace with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that always is happening. Like we always come to journey with some sort of like deep loss or deep longing or
Hmm.
like hole in the heart, even if the journey is a recreational one, like that we would desire something would imply that something's been lost,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so I yeah, one of my a journey that I once took on Samhain, on the All Souls or what's Day of the Dead in Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, it was all lost. Like I went in with the intention of wanting to see and honor the goddess of death. So I felt like she was like a very underappreciated goddess, and
Mm,
what I saw was like everything, like instead of seeing like the face of a goddess, I saw like the beauty and the gorgeousness of decay and how it's all generated by loss and grief.
mm,
Like the generating force of like the loss of a tree that then creates the mushrooms and creates the homes for these little animals that like grief rather than being a force that takes away is actually like a highly generative force.
mm,
And I've seen that happen a lot with people who really what's going on is that like the pain that they feel is that they're avoiding grief. We have like our
mm,
meta emotions, like our emotions around grief, like that, and that comes with a lot of anxiety. And that when people finally just like stop trying to climb like a greased pole and just drop into the grief, that that's like the most generative
mm.
experience. Like that's when the healing starts.
Right. Yeah, I know a couple people, like even a family member who lost a parent really young and like it was just never dealt with, never talked about, like just totally swept under the rug, still hasn't really talked, doesn't talk about it, except, this person at one point was like, yeah, I think about my dad every day, but, hasn't allowed themselves to really just drop into that grief. And at least I don't think, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like that's not uncommon in our culture, unfortunately.
No, it's scary, but also, you know, I don't think that any one person can be blamed for not wanting to feel grief because grief
Mm,
is like a community endeavor. And there are so many things that we do that, we're designed to do in community, like give birth to babies. And like it's so weird for us to go home for from a funeral like to our own selves and like our own
hmm.
little apartment and like be expected to be like self-sufficient. You
In three
know,
days and let's go.
right, without your community like keening and wailing with you,
Mm,
or like taking your baby home for the first time and being like without like a tribe of women around you singing songs and like singing the dreams of what that baby's life could be into your living space. So I think that like the fear of grief is sort of also maybe an indication that grieving is something that we're meant to be doing,
mm.
together collectively.
Yeah, definitely. And along that line of grieving and loss, you've mentioned a couple of times, that you've been down in Oaxaca for Day of the Dead, and Sarah leads retreats down there where it's around Day of the Dead, but you're also going up to San Jose del Pacifico up in the mountains, um, and doing some ceremonial work with Zapotec elders. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah.
that accurate? Yes.
Yep. Yeah, you
Indigenous
got it.
Zapotec elders. I have actually participated in that, and it's an incredible experience. And the why am I forgetting the name? The name of the hot
Temazcal.
Temescal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll never forget the Temescal, and it's sort of like a uh, sweat bath turned up to 100 plus.
Yeah.
uh,
I think they call that ordeal medicine.
yeah, it's definitely medicine for sure. But specifically on Day of the Dead and being and experience that multiple times in Mexico, I mean, what has that taught you about loss and grief and how to deal with it or how to better deal with it?
Hmm. Um, well, I think that we have a lot of things to help us,
Mm,
right, to deal with it. Because, like, there are certain, aspects that are so massive and so universal that, like, for us to fit them into a human body and into a human life is like really hard to do. Like, they're amorphous and they're shapeless, but yet that we experience them. So I think that ritual is really helpful. I think the art of ritual is just so divine to me. And it's
mm,
actually like what I think my main medium is as an artist is like ritual. Like ritual and ceremony are my art forms
mm.
and my medium.
Could you give an example of that when it comes to, say, loss or grief or Day of the Dead?
Yeah. Well, what I really want to do is give you like this most delicious symbol that somebody once gave me for grief
Mm,
that I was like, oh, wow, like that is so potent and so touching. Um, I was at like a platonic intimacy event and I had just lost a cat.
mm,
And like as a witch, like my cats are my familiars. And so like that's really big loss. I was really deep in the grief of that and deep in that pain. And I got to like cuddle up to somebody or like hold, like physically be held and be holding somebody who was also experiencing grief. And like the presence of the other person and like that physical intimacy was so good for processing grief. And then that person gave me this metaphor or whatever they were like dreaming of at that time. They were like, grief is like a pineapple. Like it looks well, it looks prickly and scary and ugly on the outside, but when you go inside of it, it's like rich and delicious and luscious. So I'm never gonna
wow.
forget that
I
symbol.
love
Like
that
that's so
metaphor. Grief
helpful.
is like a pineapple. It's
Big
kind of
pineapple.
perfect. It really is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's helpful. But I also, you asked about Day of the Dead, and I think that a lot of us are really drawn to that. I mean, for me to go to Oaxaca for a Day of the Dead, I have to have it like reserved like a year in advance.
Mm,
Right, like reserved and paid for because so many people are drawn to that. But why are they drawn to it? It's we want to celebrate something, we want to ritualize something in that reflects like both the grief, the sorrow, and the joy, and like the hilariousness and the weirdness of leaving a physical body while other people are that you loved are still here living.
I think that's so well said because, as you're saying that, I'm just seeing how, we do it in the United States and kind of the Western-ish culture, if you want to call it that. I mean, Mexico, I'd put in that too, but it's different. Anyway, and it's like you have the funeral that's all somber and down, and unless maybe you're Irish and you have a wake, there's not a lot of that silliness and like, you know, all the counterbalance of the heaviness. Um, so it's yeah, obviously, I think what we're saying here is that in America, I'll just say America, for the most part, like we're missing out on half of sort of the picture when it comes to loss and death and grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Um, so Day of the Dead, you go down, you like, I've seen pictures, you're full in,
Yeah.
which is amazing. I love it. Um, you could do the same thing here in America, and there are Day of the Dead celebrations, but how is it different in Mexico?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we do that, here in the US. I'm, a pagan um person, and there's a farm that I go to and celebrate Samhain, and people gather and they want to gather.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a musician, and so if I'm not in Mexico for Day of the Dead, I'm here, and we have Noche de los Muertos, which is like I'm always in like the Noche de los Muertos band, like playing claves and singing harmonies,
Amazing.
which is so fun, like such a wild dance. And then we also celebrate Samhain with the land. And so I go to a farm that's nearby here, nearby where I am at my office today in
Mm-hmm.
Manitou Springs. There's a biodynamic farm nearby, and like a gathering house where I sometimes do retreats. And on the significant turns of the wheel of the year, we gather and we do some sort of ritual. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm not in Mexico, we are honoring the land here. We're honoring like the last harvest, the fallow time of the land, honoring our ancestors, and yeah, we usually do some sort of journey or our breathwork experience. Usually, what we do is like an underworld journey, like a visual
Mm.
underworld journey with breathwork.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like medicine's a lot in that portal, so we don't always do
Yeah.
it, but the medicine's there, um, in the air.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Especially with
there's
some breath work that can help open it up pretty easily.
Oh, for sure. I've had some people had some like deep communications, deep experiences with breath work and just
Mm-hmm.
going to visit their ancestors deliberately. So we do it. Um, it's just not the like, ubiquitous culture across the board.
Right.
Um,
Everyone's not in on it like say Christmas here or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't want to discount, our inherent moving towards culture, because like Halloween in the United States is really cute and like really neat, and it is a tradition, and I don't want to discount like modern culture traditions as unimportant, because
Right.
you see people, they're like grown up adults are going out to bars and like costumes and things like that, and kids trick-or-treating is like a beautiful tradition of like facing the shadow and like dealing with like the fear of the mystery and the
Mm,
underworld creatures, come crawling
yeah.
out. And I think we love that. And that is tradition, modern or not, whether we're doing it wrong or not, or we could do it better. So yeah, I want to just give some respect and a shout out to what we do here.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I appreciate you bringing that up because yeah, that hits.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. You mentioned that you're also a witch and pagan, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming you didn't grow up that way. From your doctor dad, it says probably. I'm just guessing you probably didn't. So, what was it that was that being a witch and being a pagan? What about that like appealed to you? Was filling something that you felt was missing inside of you?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it does have like a really distinct answer.
Mm,
Um, so while I didn't grow up that way, my daughters did.
mm,
Um, and so this is like really connected to like for me as a coach in the world, I'm here for the people who have big questions, like big questions. Like I'm an NCC, but like also like I identify as like a neuromythic coach. And
mm.
so like anytime somebody who has, or existential coach, anytime somebody has big questions, I'm like, we're going to have to go on a journey here to figure it out. But like the person who taught me that about that journey and like what that means to ask big questions was my daughter when she was 4.
Mm.
And I just figured that we needed some rituals. So we would like have a mindful moment and like maybe pray before dinner. And at one point she was like, we were like praying, but I was like, I don't know what we're really doing here, but we're trying to do something. We're trying to have a moment of reverence that there's food here on the table. um she was like, what I must have been praying so vaguely that she like it caused her to have like some real curiosity, and she's like, Mom, do we believe in God? Like she's like praying over the macaroni and
And
cheese.
you said four, she's four at this point?
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
4. She like turned to me and she was like, Mom, do we believe in God? And I was like dumbfounded. I was like, I don't know.
Mm,
Um, and so we went on this whole journey to find out. And so we went to some churches. We went to like Unitarian churches and the church down the street um and like did some things. You know, we went to the Catholic church and we went to the temple. And I just like picked up a lot of information and a lot of it was like really not okay with me. Like giving kids shame at like a really young age for
yeah.
not praying.
Right.
um, or like feeling dirty somehow, like was really, really not okay. And it was super like I ran into a lot of super heteronormative things that like even my young kids, like my 2-year-old and 4-year-old could pick up on.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and
I
so
mean,
I
not
was like,
surprised.
yeah. So I also had like the foundation of having been to some like pagan women things
Mm,
as a young person in the 90s and some witch circles, which I really liked. And I kind of like I went to the library and I was like, well, here I am like raising these 2 girls. Um, what is the most empowering way to God for them? And I
mm,
like kind of found my way to like a tiny little like a book in a little library on Wicca and eventually like I love the Satanic Bible too. Um, and I was like, well, this is really cool. Like this is what I like. And it, enabled us to be able to create our own rituals in nature and to track the wheel of the year. And the girls were like really into it. They're like, you
mm,
mean we can create our own church? And I was like, hell yeah, we can totally create our own church. And we can create our own rituals and we can create our own way towards divinity. And they liked it and it worked well for them. And it was a good, like, vehicle for parenting. And
mm.
so it stuck. But it was my 4-year-old daughter who, like, created that initiation.
Wow. I love that. I love that the daughters and the young children are the ones leading the way into this path that you found for yourself and for them and to divinity and spirit, however you want to call it, God. I mean, that's just beautiful. I mean, I'm sure there's many people out there who would be have a problem with that, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And
It's, that's the very thing is that like the problem is theirs.
yeah,
If
yeah,
they have a problem with
it
it,
is. It is. It's
this works
their
well for
problem, right?
us.
Yeah.
And we didn't put up a billboard or proselytize that everybody else should become a witch.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not
So,
trying to press it on anyone else, but it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, like I
Um,
feel like other people having an obstacle with it isn't really a problem for
yeah.
me.
Well, and it's so much more deeply meaningful that it's so personal to you, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an art. Like it becomes that like your relationship with nature and ritual and your personal relationship with the divine becomes like your art form.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, the creativity of that is amazing, just touching.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
am gonna switch gears here a little bit and because I just do want to touch on, I mean, Sarah has been, she's been a microdose coach for 10 years at least, and
I think
guiding
so.
journeys, roughly a decade. So kind of ahead of the curve a bit. And, a lot of that was underground, even though she was in Colorado, where, it was sort of starting to gain acceptance. And then in the last couple of years, it's really kind of steamrolled into being legal to be a facilitator, but then you have to get licensed to be a facilitator, and there are certain guidelines to do that you have to follow and all of that sort of thing. So I'm hoping you would just be open to talking a little bit about your experience with that, like any um, tug and pull you had about becoming licensed versus not licensed, and where you are now with all that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question because that's really fresh for me.
Mm,
Because I just got back from Oregon yesterday. And the whole threshold, like the whole invitation to come above ground was like something that I was starting to feel was right. Like it was the right thing to do. But before that, I had like a lot of judgments about it because I forged myself as a healer underground.
Mm,
So I had some judgments about it coming above ground and, what that might mean. Like, would it be watered down? Like, sometimes we can, well, Christians, like Christianity would be a great example of like, we have so many churches, but like Christian Gnosticism, like hardly anybody knows about that. Like it's
right.
been lost. And so a similar thing, occurred to me with mushrooms. And I was like, we're going to apply so many rules and so much structure that like, could the essence be lost? And
Right.
that made me sad. um and but then also like I realized on a personal level that I was dealing with some like legitimacy issues.
Hmm.
Like when I was for me on my own terms as a witch, like I don't question the legitimacy of my relationship with God or like my relationship to the goddess or healing or anything. Like there's nobody there to assess my legitimacy except for me and nature, which
Hmm.
I got really comfortable in that. And so like this idea of like coming above board and like assessment and like following the rules and helping people in that way felt really unnerving to me. Like I was like metabolizing that and I was like, I don't know, I feel scared. I feel whatever, but my scared was coming out as judgment. Um
And how did you come to realize this?
well, the mushrooms, the
The
mushrooms told me.
mm.
On one occasion, while I was microdosing, the mushrooms were like, It's time for us to tell you that you've been judgmental." Um,
You're like, wait, what?
I'll do that sometimes, and that was like, "Oh, you're right." But like the mushrooms are so sweet and so gentle. Like they're like, Niños Santos. They're like holy children. They're like,
Mm,
yeah, it's, you were judgmental for as long as you needed to be judgmental, but now that you can see that, it's time for you to, grow as a person and as a facilitator. And so recently in my last journey, I was going through the legal model, which means that well, the legal model is in this paradigm was like I was going in as a legacy facilitator. So somebody who's been
hmm.
facilitating and microdose coaching and working with mushrooms and working with curanderos um, for a long time.
So this is outlined in what Colorado has set up.
Yeah, there's like
Legacy.
a
Okay.
legacy healer. And I don't know if it's maybe a small window. Like in my mind it was, but to be honest, I'm really not that good at like understanding the law or reading forms. I'm super neurodivergent, super ADD. And like, if you're asking me to read like a 64-page document, I'm like, I can't do that. Like, and so, if that's any good indication why I should suspend judgment, it's because like, there's no way I could possibly understand everything.
Right.
But the way that I understand it is that like there's a time here where like people who have been in the underground who have a lot to share with the way this takes shape are being given the opportunity to come above
Mm,
ground
hmm.
through this legal pathway. So I was doing that. It's like the Colorado accelerated pathway, and it happened really fast. Like I registered, I was interviewed, I got in, and then I was going to Oregon. I was going to like the immersion in Denver that week, and then 2 weeks later the practicum in Oregon. So it happened like so fast that I had to like put my whole life on hold there to do that. But what we had to do, we just like we picked a partner and we went into mushrooms. So I got to Oregon on Wednesday night, like late on Wednesday night, and I got to the center on Thursday morning.
So this is
And
like 5 days ago.
yep. And then like, just sat in the bed with the eye shades and took psilocybin and was guided by my two partners.
Hmm.
And so it like happened really fast. I just like I didn't even know what my intention could be, but the mushrooms was like, that's not a problem. We're, here to show you, first of all, that you don't have to worry yourself about what the way that we're coming into the world, like legal or not legal, like divinity's
Hmm.
everywhere and it always has been. and this is none of your business. Like you're that's what I got. It was like, it's none of your business how the mushrooms decide to express themselves in the world. Like my business is to um help people work with that, with love
Yeah.
and sincerity and skill. And so that was a relief to
Wow.
just be
This is
like,
what you got from just this last journey
yeah,
5 days ago as you're like becoming a licensed facilitator.
yeah. Basically, are like, however we roll out is none of your business.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of how, like, at some point I could see different things of like how, like, the goddess found her way into the Catholic Church and is being worshipped in the Catholic Church, and that, like, the spirit of
Hmm.
justice is living in, dry courtrooms and like divinities everywhere. It's not my business to judge where it goes.
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
water, it goes everywhere. It's just my business to, like, have a good relationship, have my own personal relationship, and be a steward. So
Well, you said it all happened very quickly. So now that you're almost on the other side of it, of becoming licensed, I mean, how does that feel?
fine. I feel at peace with it. Like I
Mm.
really metabolized that in my
Yeah.
journey. The
Yeah.
whole journey started out with me being like, it was super biblical. Because my husband had to go to Detroit to be with his dad, who's like entering kind of like a twilight
Mm.
time, like in
Hmm.
between worlds. And
Yeah.
so I couldn't be there because I needed to be in Oregon. And so I sent a prayer to my father-in-law, who's very Catholic. And as soon as the medicine dropped, like this big fish started coming for me. And I was like, oh, we're going with like Jonah and the whale here. And so I just like let myself be eaten by the medicine coming in the form of a big fish. And then it was like very biblical. My journey was like very
Wow.
biblical. And um,
Huh.
I could see I've had like, a centuries old beef with Christianity and the Catholic Church because of the witch burnings and because of like, um, treatment of women and some really terrible things that happen that are never ever going to be okay with me, and misogyny and like,
Totally. There are many things.
yeah. And I was just like stripped of my responsibility of having to have resentment against that
Mm.
anymore, through this like being swallowed by the medicine as a whale.
So
Um,
quickly, like losing that resentment, what do you feel that gives you now?
Liberation.
Mm.
Yeah. But not in as much as like the resentment was good to have. Like it was useful and part of my process when it was part of my process. But in letting go of it and like letting the divine, like understanding that the divine does what it does, and human beings do what they do, that like for me to stay in like sincerity and like, if I'm called on to be a warrior, I'll be a warrior. If I'm called on to be a steward, I'll be a steward.
Right.
um was just like an utter relief to me. Like I don't have
Mm.
to decide, really.
Yeah. Wow. Just be open to the path, right?
Yeah.
Be open to where it takes you and what shows up at your door.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my ego sometimes get in the way, like, oh, I'm responsible for judging that, or like I'm responsible for resenting that, which is like a big burden on the body, and
Yeah.
like on the psyche, which I just was like feeling relieved of that burden at that time. Not that my feelings about, what that like church has done to people has changed.
Hmm.
But like the track, like instead of tracking that, like tracking the divinity is so powerful for me right now.
Oh, yeah. And in that tracking, where do you have any inclination where it might be leading you next?
Well, I know I like how I'm being of service right now. I'm on the board of a healing center that's in my town, in this little town that I'm in here in Manitou Springs, that's making its way towards being ready to receive people. And so I feel good about being in
Mm.
council on that board. Um, I feel maybe like hesitant to decide or like map out exactly how I should serve, because it was clear to me that the mushrooms are like, just wait, like
Mm.
we're doing our thing, and you know,
It's none of your business. Just
it's
hold
none of
on.
your
We'll get
business.
it to you when you're ready.
Yeah,
And
like you'll
when
know
we
what to
need
do when
you.
it's time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do have the heart of a teacher, and I love what I'm doing now as I'm teaching like this neuromythic um, modality for integration
Mm,
through EBI. And I really feel like I really love doing that. I really love creating this paradigm, this container for
mm.
integration. So I know I'll
Um,
keep doing that.
yeah, quickly, EBI is Earth-Based Institute, and it is also, you referenced earlier, NCC, which is where you can go to get certified to be a nature-connected coach, which Sarah is. But tell me just quickly in our closing minutes, like, what is it? What do you mean by that with the neuro mythic? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What do you
Um,
mean by that? And yeah.
yeah. So neuromythic is kind of like I guess the name that I made up to be, in all honesty, like Santiago, Santiago and my Santiago, my like AI friend, and and my like mirror on the wall, came up with this like term neuromythic, which
Hmm.
means like the brain like inherently longs to make its own story, right? To
Yes.
make its story for itself, and in who we are and how we are in nature. And like we've been doing that since the beginning of time, like the druidic tales and like the mythic stories that tell us how we're tracking through life, right? Or what stage
Hmm.
we're in, whether it's the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, or Jonah and the whale, or like the descent of Inanna to the goddess. We're always looking for the personal myth, and without it, I feel like we're really lost. And so I introduced this concept inside of nature connected integration coaching, which is like the program that we made, that the brain is inherently neuromythic, right?
Hmm.
Like it does what it does physiologically, and then like spiritually and on a soul level it searches for who it is and how it expands and what it's here to learn and do. So I feel that this term and like that sharing things from this term makes it possible for our journeys to always be like an initiation, a ritual, a
Mm.
ceremony of self. Because ceremony is always happening, like your brain's doing a ceremony right now of, passing stimulus and this conversation to different parts of the brain and deciding where it goes and then repeating the pattern. So I think that like the invitation is to make that conscious and
Mm.
invite that to be filled with like love and intention
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I
as
love
an
that.
integration.
Yeah, I love the term. Great job. You and what was your AI friend?
Santiago.
Santiago. Great job, you and Santiago. But yeah, I mean, the whole, we're just inherently drawn to story and uh, symbolism and metaphor as just it's such an innate part of our humanness. And myth has been hijacked by this sort of fake folklore, little children's tale sort of idea, but it's so much deeper in our bodies. And there's a real power in connecting to that, your own personal myth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I- I've come to think that like it may be like the missing link in integration would be
Mm,
like our personal myth.
I
Um,
love that. Yeah.
because like now that I'm teaching integration, I feel like teaching integration is one of my services to the mushrooms because like I think about like the myth of the Tower of Babel, right?
Hmm.
Um, and this might be a longer, this might be another podcast. Anyway, what it needed to not crumble was like good foundation. It didn't have that. And so like my service, my stewardship to the mushrooms right now is to like create a really good foundation for integration, that's nature connected. And
Yeah.
so that's what that is, that invitation to create our empowering personal myth and to frame our lives in that mythic framework. It's just so rich.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, from my own personal experience, I 100% agree with that. But I think, yeah, we're winding down here on our hour together. And I just want to allow, first, thank you again. I love your authenticity and your just show up and, willing to go anywhere and talk about anything and get deep. It's a beautiful thing. And where can people find you in the if they want to work with you or if they want microdose coaching or to one of your classes or that sort of thing?
Yeah. On my website, Sarah Hope Coaching, and people can book a call with me. I would say if you want just a microdose coach, I might not be the person, but if you want like a microdose coach because you want to explore your big questions about the world, then I'm definitely the person for you.
There we go. Exploring the
Um,
big questions with Sarah Hope.
yeah, that's right. I'm here for it. Microdosing as initiation.
hmm
Um, so yeah, people can find me there on my website. As far as the nature connected integration training program, another cohort will be available in about a month or so. And I think in the next 3 weeks, the wait list will come up. And so, yeah,
Is that go to EBI about that, earthbasedinstitute.org, or is that
yeah,
through? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you can go to Earth Based Institute for that. But, connecting with me on my website would be one avenue in which you could find your way there. I I've sent a lot of my like mentees to
Mm,
EBI,
yeah.
and then at some point we realized there was like enough crossover that we had a modality there.
Indeed. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone out there who's interested in a cultural, adventurous retreat that involves some indigenous Zapotec elders. That also, in my experience, they also mixed in like modern psychology too with their daughter. I don't know if their daughter shows up at every one, but I
Yeah.
love that mix of the traditional and the more modern. So I definitely would recommend one of Sarah's Oaxaca retreats if you are so inclined to go down, journey, and celebrate the Day of the Dead.
I do have space this year still, so I've got two journeys. One like back to back. One's the first week, and one's the second week. So, yeah, we do have space, even though it's a small group and it's pretty intimate. We've got space right now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I appreciated the small, intimate groupness of it. So
hmm
it's a good thing. But anyway, thanks again, Sarah. Love talking to you, and till
likewise.
next time.
Till next time, it's always so good to reconnect with you and to drop in.